Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Butterfield Bermuda Initial Research Show. I hope you had a fantastic Worldwide Technologies. Yours truly was a mixed bag. Austin Smotherman, Neil Shipley really hurt considering I had them in majority of my lineups. Patrick Rogers was fairly okay, pretty middling. Bo Hostler was fine. I mentioned Austin Eckroat last Wednesday night in the DFS Tactics show, but only casually, so clearly wasn't high enough on him. So a pretty mixed bag, little good, little bad, and we're going to try and find all of the good this week for the penultimate, at least DraftKings and PGA Tour official PGA Tour event for 2024. We are in Bermuda for the Butterfield Bermuda Championship. Let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is your best analytic golf tool out there for your money. It is everything that you need to make the right choices week in and week out for your wagers and your lineup considerations. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where tomorrow I will post some research regarding the previous winners of the Bermuda Championship, some patterns that they all share, and the players in the field this week who also fit those patterns. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contest I play. That'll come out every Wednesday evening after the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see those pieces of information, give me a follow over at X. Finally, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. Really is a wonderful way to start your week of preparation. He continues to update you throughout the week. And if you are a subscriber to his article, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday night after calls in the DFS Tactics show as we continue the DFS talk over there. It's very informative, very entertaining. You really are missing out. And we are going to be working on some co-content, for lack of better terms. We're going to be working on content together for 2025. I probably will have something next week for the RSM for that. I'm going to have to get with Gabe with that. But you are missing out if you are not subscribed to his article. It is free to do. So make sure you are doing that. Follow him over on social media. Give him some support as well. And lastly, we are live. Chat is open. I want to hear from you all. How was your Worldwide Technologies? Did you have Austin Eckroat? Did you bet him outright? Want to hear about any success that you have had for the Worldwide Technologies? A slight tangent here. I myself hit a little NFL parlay, a little 16 parlay today, so a little bit of success there. Want to hear about any success you are having in terms of the wagers and DFS landscape, so feel free to jump in chat. And of course, what do you know of the Bermuda Championship in Port Royal? How do you think the course is going to play? Who do you think the favorite is early this week? Jump in the chat and give us your thoughts. Would love to hear from you. So let's do our initial research for the 2024 Butterfield Bermuda Championship. And we start as we always do on a Sunday evening over at the GCSAA tournament fact sheet for the Butterfield Bermuda Championship. We are in Southampton, Bermuda at Port Royal Golf Course. The course itself sits right on the coast, as of the majority of the island does, but the course in of itself sits right on the coast. So always a factor with wind here at Bermuda. Last year there was a mixed bag, a couple of rounds that were fairly easy, fairly calm, and then the winds picked up on the weekend. I vividly remember Lucas Herbert winning this tournament on Sunday with 40-mile-an-hour gusting winds and rain and nastiness. So we will have to keep a very close eye on the weather as we proceed through this week. We always start with weather on Mondays, and of course I'll update you Wednesday. But as you are going through your week, I cannot stress it enough to try to stay on top of the Bermuda forecast, as that's going to play a big factor into who we want to focus on and wave advantage and any of that. Port Royal is a Robert Trent Jones Sr. design, renovated most recently in 2008, so at least in terms of PGA Tour play, has not been renovated since it opened. It is a very short, an extremely short par 71, the shortest course on tour by par, as it is a par 71, not even a par 70. It is a par 71, measuring just over 6,800 yards. This here is, I believe, a typo or a misprint by the GCSA tournament fact sheet, as every single year prior to this listed these greens at 6,000 square feet. So I am fairly confident that these greens are average in size, not gargantuan, which is what these would be. I am fairly confident that this is 6,000 square feet. I believe it's just a typo on the GCSA fact sheet's part. So we're looking at average greens, average size greens. They are kept very slow, just like the majority of Caribbean and coastal events because of the wind. Not a lot of fairway, only 21 acres. If you'll recall to last week at El Cardinal, we had 88 acres of fairway, so quadruple the amount last week at the Worldwide Technologies that we do this week in Bermuda. A little bit of rough. It's not kept very thick, only 2 inches rough, or 2 inches thick. This pure Bermuda rough. There are 7 holes with water in play. Probably really only 3 or 4 for professionals, but 7 holes that water does technically come into play. These greens, it's important to note, are Tiff Eagle Bermuda, and that is important because there are a few courses on the PGA Tour that have Tiff Eagle Bermuda. If I grab my notes here, the most one that comes to my mind is Bay Hill, Arnold Palmer Invitational, Kapalua. The Century Tournament of Champions is also Tiff Eagle. PGA National, what was formerly the Honda, now, or this past year, was the Cognizant Classic. Port Royal, of course, where we are this week. And next week, Sea Island, the RSM, has Tiff Eagle Bermuda. So those 5 courses are consistent on the PGA Tour that have this specific subset of Bermuda grass, this Tiff Eagle Bermuda. And be on the lookout tomorrow for the research, considering one very worthwhile note revolves around specifically Tiff Eagle Bermuda. But anyway, these greens are Tiff Eagle Bermuda. We are on Bermuda throughout all of the course. The exception of the fairways has Bermuda and zoysia, a little of zoysia mixed in the fairway on the back 9, as the back 9, I believe, is more coastal. I believe that I have that correct. So there's a look at Port Royal from a GCSA tournament fact sheet. Again, the key takeaways. This is a Robert Trent Jones design, so no architect filter to work with in Fantasy National. This is a very, very short course, probably the shortest by par on tour at just over 6,800 yards. There are 4 par 3s and 3 par 5s. So as you can imagine, lots and lots of short par 5s and short par 4s here at Port Royal. These greens, I think this is a typo. I believe they're average size, and just like other Caribbean events, they are kept very slow. They are Tiff Eagle Bermuda, and not a whole lot of fairway, but the rough isn't too thick to worry about. There's a look at that. We will move to Fantasy National and the players in the field this week. And typically, like we talk about on Sunday evenings for the field for that week in the fall, this is a very, very weak field. It's just, it is what it is. No other way around that. Your only top 50 OWGR player in the field this week is Lucas Glover. In fact, if we look at some of the players who have been playing the best recently, you kind of struggle for a headliner. Maybe Mackenzie Hughes, Matty Schmid. Granted, he missed the cut this past week, but had been playing pretty well. Seamus Power has won here. Your defending champion is Camilo Villegas. He is back in the field, but really kind of lacks big name notoriety. Daniel Berger, Vegas, Mav McNeely, maybe, but these are fairly regular kind of tour players in the grand scheme of the PGA Tour. You don't have your Xanders, your Scotties, your Rorys, any of those players coming to Bermuda to play. This is the epitome of a fall event and a very, very weak field. So looking at or using that last 2 months filter, going back to the Pro Core, your top players in the field this week during the fall portion, and it's important to note that the Worldwide Technologies is not in here yet, so this will change come tomorrow night. But your top performers in the fall portion of the schedule in the field this week: Lucas Glover, Matty Schmid, Grayson Sigg, Mackenzie Hughes, Doug Gim, Joe Highsmith, Seamus Power, Kevin Yu, Wesley Bryan, and Brent Snedeker. All right, before we get too much, actually, you know what? We do know from the GCSA tournament fact sheet that this is an extremely short course, so we can go ahead and take a look at short course performance here. We'll expand this to the last 2 years, 36 rounds. Your top performers on short courses, those defined as less than 7,200 yards per Fantasy National. Your top performers on short courses in the past 2 years or 36 rounds: Ben Griffin, who has played very, very well here in the past; Ryo Hitsatsune; Taylor Montgomery; Mackenzie Hughes; Carson Young; Grayson Sigg; Johnny Vegas; Michael Kim; Mark Hubbard; and Vince Whaley. All right, with that, now we'll go to the course breakdown here in Fantasy National. Take a look at Port Royal from a scorecard and graphical viewpoint. The par fives, 3 easiest scoring opportunities on the course. Your par 5 second, the longest par 5 at 553. So it is very conceivable that no par 5 plays over 550 yards on a given day when they move tees and pins around. Not necessarily a great eagle opportunity, but still a good scoring opportunity. Almost a third of a shot under par. But the other par 5s are excellent scoring opportunities. Par 5 seventh, only 517 yards. Yields an eagle at 4.5%. Half a shot under par. 0.4 of a shot under par on the par 5 17th at 507. So 2 very, very short par 5s. One, middle length that probably is more short than not. And a lot of shorter par 4s as well. 438, you see that's where even par falls on this course. The 7th most difficult hole, which would signify this is fairly easy. That can be misleading depending on the wind. If the wind is down, if there's not a lot of wind, this course is very easy. The main defense of the course, just like most Caribbean events, is the wind. So if the wind really does pick up, talking about historic conditions, or scoring conditions as well, if the wind picks up, it can be difficult, depending on how much the wind is going and whatnot. So you see a full mixed bag here of easy and average. You see, last year, as I mentioned in the intro, the first 2 rounds the winds were relatively calm, maybe 10 to 15 mile an hour, and it played really easy. The winds picked up on the weekend and it got a little tougher. It has been difficult before, especially when the winds are very, very strong, but it can play easy. So a little bit of a mixed bag here in terms of scoring conditions, and it's all predicated on the wind. But generally speaking, a fairly easy course. There's where par falls, but a lot of short par 4s, as I was mentioning: 438, 380, 370, 383, 350. Not drivable, or at least most professionals don't choose to go after this green. As you can see, only a 0.1% eagle rate, but a very short par 4. Just a lot of shorter par 4s here. The difficulty of Port Royal is in the par 3s. You have your easiest par 3 at 148. Actually plays a decent bit under par. But the rest are long and difficult. Par 3 8th, 213, plays to 1700ths over par. 2/10ths over par. A quarter of a shot over par. So the par 3s are extremely difficult here. Minus the short one. So that is where players can really struggle if they are not dialed in with those long iron approaches on those par 3s or long iron tee shots on those par 3s. Moving to the graphical view, again, with this being a Caribbean or international event, we don't have shot link, so no strokes gained data. So we'll have to go straight to the strokes gained by hole by par. You can see, like most tournaments with 3 or 4 par 5s on a course, par 5s get taken advantage of. That's where the majority of the strokes gained are happening here. But the par 3s are outweighing the par 4s. Again, with these 3 very difficult par 3s, if you are playing them at even par, you are gaining on the field. So it's going to be pretty important to see how players play those par 3s. There's your top 5 performers, and your winners historically have probably been playing these par 4s. That's where they've been scoring, on these shorter par 4s. I don't think we want to ignore the par 3s, though. I think that was one of my mistakes last week at Diamante. I think I put a little bit too much weight into the par 3s, and I said all along throughout the week that I was going to. I don't think they ended up playing as important as I initially thought they might. Well, there's a look at strokes gained by hole by par performance for Port Royal. We move to, again, hole composition. I don't know why Fantasy National is struggling with that. So we can take a quick look here. The par 3s we talked about. 1 extremely short par 3 and 3 long par 3s. 213, 235, 235. So long, difficult par 3s. The par 4s, you have 1 that's right on the border of that 350 boundary, but several that are under 400 yards. 380, 370, 383, 393. So 4 of the 11 par 4s fall from 350 to 4, maybe even 5 if you want to count this one. And then the 400, 450, you have, I think, 5 or 6 of them. 438, 443, it's 2. 412, 410. So there's 4 more there from 400 to 450. The longest par 4, one of the more difficult holes on the course, sure, but it's only at 458. So players aren't having a whole lot of long, difficult irons into most of these holes, with the exception of the par 3s. And then the par 5s, we talked about, there's 1 above 550 yards, and the other 2 are much closer to 500, 507 and 517. So here's a quick run through of the hole composition chart. Scoring distribution. Again, I think this is a tad misleading because if the wind really picks up, it does get difficult here. But 22% birdie rate, 13.5 or 13 3/4 bogey rate. There are some doubles to be had though. When the winds pick up, there is some water protecting some areas of the course. Doubles can happen. So technically it's going to be on the easier end. And I would say it's probably an easier course for professionals. But the wind changes all that. Historic cut line. It has been as high as +2 when the winds were really, really high. You see last year the winds were down. I think that's probably a typo. I'd have to guess. Maybe it's not. Yeah, it's combining it. So it's combining these 2 years. But both of those years, however, I believe it was at -4. So easy. So very easy when the winds are down. I would venture to say, without having looked at the forecast right now, I think it's probably safe to think that the cut line will be right around -1 or -2, all depending on the wind, which we'll start looking at tomorrow. Driving accuracy, much lower here. Again, these are some fairly narrow fairways, but having said that, the players aren't afraid to be in the rough since it is only 2 inches in length in the rough. So players know they don't have to be extra precise here. So driving accuracy, much less. Green and regulation percentage, slightly higher than the average tour event, with average size greens and winds that can really pick up. The fact that they are slightly higher means that this is probably, again, on the easier end. And scrambling is a little bit easier here than the average tour event. So there's a look at Port Royal from a kind of a scorecard and graphical view. So we'll come back to the players in the field this week. And I'm not terribly confident looking at easy relative to par until we get a better idea on what the forecast is. And again, we'll start with that tomorrow. So instead, let's just kind of do what we can in terms of strokes gained. Difficult without any strokes gained data, no shot link data. But very, very clearly, approach is going to have to be a pretty big factor. So if, again, we'll take a look at the last 2 months, this time frame of from the FedEx Fall. Your top approach players in the field this week, or at least in the FedEx Fall portion: Lucas Glover, Doug Gim, Mackenzie Hughes, Michael Kim, Ben Coles, Nick Hardy, Seamus Power, Austin Smotherman, Rio Itsatsune, Joe Highsmith, and Mark Hubbard. This won't change because we did not get shot link data at El Cardinal, so we're not going to get any of the shot link data for off the tee, putting, etc. from last week. So this is going to stay the same. We saw that around the green, or at least scrambling, was a little bit easier than the tour average. Not really all that crazy about it. So instead, let's go into the putting. First thing I'm going to do is we're going to look at Velcro Bermuda. These are going to be very, very slow. Very, very slow. Because, again, being on the coast with the winds, they have to keep these greens slow to keep play, essentially. If we look at historic conditions again, Velcro the past 2 years, they got average in speed in 2021, but they were Velcro the year before that. It's going to be slow, and there's not a lot of data here. Not a lot of data on Velcro speed Bermuda greens. It's really only the Century, and Butterfield Bermuda, which we don't get putting data for. So we're having a little bit of a case like last week where the only putting data we got was from Vedanta on past Palom greens. We're getting a little bit of that with this Century, Butterfield Bermuda. Valero sometimes has some very slow greens. You can see back in 2021, Valero had slow greens. Back in 2013. So instead of that, maybe average works as well. We got a few more rounds here, but even so, if we filter this to the last 2 years, I bet you there's not many. Yeah, 22. So understand the inexact or the imperfect data that I'm showing you here. It's not how I wish I could see it, but there's just not enough Velcro Bermuda data to look at. So on Bermuda greens that are Velcro or average per Fantasy National, your top putters traditionally, no time frame or anything, just traditionally. Kelly Craft, Ben Griffin, saying you'll know Brendan Todd, your inaugural winner here at Port Royal. Andrew Putnam, Troy Merritt, Sean O'Hare, Ryo Itsatsune, Taylor Montgomery, and Adam Long. However, what I want to focus on is this Tiff Eagle Bermuda. So we're going to take a more of a stronger look, I think is the way I want to phrase that. A more detailed look. We're going to start with Bay Hill. Then we go down to the Plantation course at Kapalua. Plantation. PGA National. I'm going to have to click both. I'll have to do some research on which one that the Honda or the Cognizant was. Port Royal, which we don't get any putting data for, but I'll still include it. And Sea Island. Sea Island Seaside. Let's apply those course filters. These are the courses that are consistent on the PGA Tour year in and year out that have specifically Tiff Eagle Bermuda. So on those courses, 36 rounds is okay, I suppose. If we filter to 2 years, I don't think that's enough. 14, 15, maybe it is. In the past 2 years, at those courses, these Tiff Eagle Bermuda courses, your top putters have been Taylor Montgomery, Chesson Hadley, Ben Taylor, David Skins, Tyler Duncan, Johnny Vegas, Sam Ryder, Mackenzie Hughes, Ben Griffin, and William McGirt. There's your top putters on Tiff Eagle Bermuda the past couple of years. So keep those players in mind as we move forward this week. I'll refresh your memory tomorrow. Might take a bigger picture view without this 2-year filter on it as well. The only other thing I wanted to maybe take a deeper look at, let's take a look at some shorter par fours. I was thinking about maybe the par threes, but let's do these shorter par fours, these 350 to 4 and 400 to 50 and 400 to 450 par fours. So we'll filter for 2024. And I am going to go all rounds because not every course has par fours that measure to this length. There might only be one, so I want to make sure we get a full comprehensive view here. Your top performers on very short par fours, 350 to 4, in the field this week: Robbie Shelton, Wilson Furr, Doug Gim, Martin Laird, Matty Schmid, Jacob Bridgman, Martin Trainer, Austin Cook, K.H. Lee, and Kevin Strillman. Pretty big star next to Jacob Bridgman. He is great at both of the two shorter par 4 ranges, 354 and 400 450. Your top par 4 performers from 400 450: Justin Lauer, Andrew Putnam, Roger Sloan, Ryo Hitsatsune, Taylor Montgomery, Zach Blair, Grayson Sigg, Chad Ramey, Peter Malnati, MJ Duffy. Andrew Putnam, pretty solid. Zach Blair, Malnati, maybe an honorable mention. I mentioned Jacob Bridgman, Lucas Glover. He's just really good at par 4s in this field. Or at least compared to this field. Probably an honorable mention down here, Doug Gim, 2nd and 24th. So there's a look at some of the players who, at least in 2024, have thrived on these shorter par 4s. But let's move to the tournament history or strokes gained total page view for the Bermuda Championship in Port Royal. Our inaugural winner back in 2020, as you can see there, was Brendan Todd. Brian Gay wins in 2021. 2022 was Lucas Herbert. Seamus Power wins in 2023. Technically the 2023 season, but 2022 calendar year. And then our defending champion is Camilo Villegas. But over the years, and it's very convenient that this course has been going for 5 years. So this is the full history of the tournament right here. In the history of the Butterfield Bermuda, Seamus Power has played the best, even without playing last year. He has a win, top 15 in a couple of middling performances, but he's been fairly solid. Justin Lauer, his runner-up finish from the Worldwide Technologies, now coming to a course where he's historically played really well. 2 top 20s and a top 10. Brendan Todd, a win, a top 20, and a miscut. Matty Schmidt's been okay. Russell Knox is 5 for 5, although the past 2 have been very subpar. Alex Smalley's been fairly good. Peter Malnati's 3 for 3. Patrick Rogers missed the cut in the inaugural, then pretty poor, and then 2 top 5s. So I don't know if I'm going to be as all in on Patrick Rogers as I was last week, but at least he's got some course history here. Villegas, even though he wasn't fantastic before his win, he at least made cuts and then wins last year. O'Hare's been okay. Vincent Whaley has 2 top 10s and a missed cut. Chesson Hadley's got 2 top 20s. So there's a few of the names and players who have played pretty well here at Port Royal in the 5 years of existence. And the other side of that coin, players who have not played well. Let's see if we can't get some notable names here. Maybe Sung Moon Bae, 2 for 4. Sung Kang, 0 for 2. KH Lee, 2 for 2 in making the cut, but you see he's been negative both years in terms of strokes gained. Michael Kim, my number 1 rated player in the rankings from last week's Worldwide Technologies, 0 for 3 here at Bermuda at Port Royal. Robbie Shelton, 1 for 2. Lucas Glover, pretty poor, 2 for 2 and made cuts, but both years seemingly negative in terms of strokes gained. Kevin Tway's only 1 for 3. Troy Merritt's 2 for 2, much like Lucas Glover, pretty poor. So there's a look at the players who have not played all that well at Port Royal. So we're going to finalize the show. We're going to go to Microsoft Excel, and the early look file is back since we have more than 1 year of data at this course. Again, no shot link data, so that's going to be a little tough. But for the players who have played Port Royal multiple times, let's figure out where they are excelling, at least in terms of the data that we can collect, and see if we can't infer some things about the types of players that we might want to focus on to start our week. So you see Justin Lauer 3 for 3, average finish of the top 15. Hadley's 2 for 2. So players who've played multiple years and had success. We'll go down to the players who have averaged, probably a top 35. That's a lot. 20 of them. Distance doesn't appear to be a big factor. 13.2. So you got a couple of bigger ones in here. Kevin Yu is, very, very good off the tee. Smalley is a great ball striker in general. Pretty decent off the tee. Matty Schmidt is a bomber. Higo bombs it. But distance isn't mandatory. I mean, look at Brendan Todd. I know he's not up here, but Brendan Todd is not a bomber by any means. And he won here. Brian Gay was not a bomber. He won here. Villegas is not a bomber. He wins. So distance is not mandatory by any stretch of the imagination. Fairways don't look like they matter much at all. This is barely above 0. So, again, this is another situation where I don't know how much off the tee is going to matter. If fairways really don't matter and distance isn't at a premium, it's hard to say that off the tee is going to be a big factor. Good drives, however, and greens might be something, because these greens aren't overly large, and when the wind picks up, it looks like being able to control your irons enough from the rough looks like it's what you need to do. There's a 2.4 in good drives and a 2.9 in greens, so much much more about the precision iron play, seemingly, than off the tee. We move to scoring. More, I would have said the more consistent was bogey avoidance and the spikes were in the birdies, but really it kind of looks like both consistency and spike is in the birdies gained. Look at that. This is a 2.5, pretty strong. This is a 1.5. But you got a couple players negative here in bogey avoidance, whereas you only have one player negative in birdies gained, and it's very minimal in his negativity in birdies gained. So at least early on this week, we're probably looking at birdies or better gained. Interesting. Moving to par 3s, 4s, and 5s. Your par 3s for the players who have averaged the top 35. This is a 1.0. Kind of a mixed bag here. You've got some players who have played them very well and some players who have just been kind of mediocre. Par 4s, 1.0, 3.2, much bigger factor. And the par 5s, this is going to be a fairly large number, 1.5. So, as we saw in the graphical view from Fantasy National, par 5s are a dominant force. I'm a little surprised that the par 3s aren't as high than this, but for the players that have played well year over year at Port Royal, it's not extremely mandatory. I mean, yeah, Roger Sloan, Higo, Matty Schmid, they've all played them well, but 3.5 is this heavy green number here. Whereas if we look at the par 4s, we've got a 7, we've got a 5.5, some 5s, 4s, much more to be gained in the par 4s. It looks like there's more to be gained in the par 5s as well. A couple players with a 5.5, 5, a 4 from Tyson Alexander, 3 from Seamus Power. So looking like perhaps the par 3s aren't as important this week. But that's all we're able to look at, considering this is an international event, or at least a Caribbean event. No shot link data. That's going to do it for the initial research show. Thank everyone for tuning in, watching, listening, supporting the channel, by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. I love what I do. Taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Last week was not my strongest performance. I had a lot of good things. I had a lot of bad things. So we're going to try to right the ship for the penultimate event of 2024 down in Bermuda. Feel free to jump into the comments with any of your thoughts for the tournament as we move forward this week, or if you want to let me know how you did at El Cardinal and the Worldwide Technologies, or any other wagering ventures that you've been successsill at. Like I mentioned in the intro, I did a small 16 NFL parlay that hit today, so it's a small little thing. But if you wanna put that out there, I would love to be able to shout out members of the community that have success. Doesn't have to be just in golf. But thanks again for all the support. Really appreciate it. For all of the wagers that you made this past week at the Worldwide Technologies, for all the DFS contests you played this past week at the Worldwide Technologies, and until I see you tomorrow night for the Data Dive show, may all your bets be profitable.